I don't like the fact that I can't hear myself because that's how I adjust how close or far away I have to get to the microphone. But because we're having gain issues, stupid gain issues, I'm just going to guess that this is okay. All right. Well, anyway, you'll just give me a pass on this one if I sound stuttery because I can't hear myself talk, let alone think. Anyway.
That's okay. I will hear you. I will hear you on behalf of you.
Okay.
For me and the audience.
I'll just look and see if you're nodding. Like, I am speaking coherent sentences. It's not as bad as this one time where you have to do this mix minus thing. Otherwise, someone's going to hear an echo. And I had a 2-second delay of my own voice. And in that episode, I barely spoke for good reason. Because when you're saying, hello, like, what did you have with this? And then all of a sudden at that moment, hello, what did you have with this? And you're like 2 seconds behind yourself. It's a freaking nightmare.
Technology has a very, very, it's good at just screwing us up on everything. I mean, it's made to be better, to be our savior, to be like our life saving. And there's nary a week goes by where somebody doesn't say, hey, Adam, you should try this new piece of technology out and it'll make your life so much easier. And I try it out and it makes my life insanely harder. And I feel like I have to master it in order to make it work for me because this guy said I should. And then it never does. And I'm just more frustrated. So, yeah.
In my situation, I had this new tech. It's working fine. Then I adjust one setting and somehow my connection from here to Riverside is like, F you, Eric.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know anything about audio. So hopefully this all works and we record something that is.
I get it now. You just need to change the FU setting.
Oh my God. I can't believe I didn't think of that.
Yeah, that's
one second.
It says FU. FU off. FU off.
Zip. Okay, there we go. Now do I sound all right?
Oh, perfect. Yes.
Okay.
Everything is back in order.
Well, now that we've got that,
Yeah.
Welcome to My Modern Myth. I am Eric. My friend who just solved the FU problem for me is Adam. And today we have a fun topic. If you couldn't tell, we're men. We're very masculine.
Manly men.
Very, very masculine. Not men in tights. Although that's a great movie. And like that movie, masculinity comes in very diverse shades. But it has certain core principles, I believe. And it is an energy state. I'm not talking about gender, I'm talking about the energies of masculine versus feminine. And as men or women, we can do this. I can also do this with femininity and look at certain feminine energies that I want to embody, which is creativity and compassion, patience, those things. But today we're going to be talking about masculine. And one thing I like to do is create, I don't know if you call them icons. It's not like you have an altar of masculinity, but I have a Mount Rushmore of masculinity. And this is an icon for each, what I call archetype. Well, I didn't. Carl Jung did. So sorry for trying to steal that little nugget from you, CJ. But I call him CJ because we're cool like that, not CG.
Cool, yeah. I tried that and he said it's Mr. Jung. And then I then mispronounced Jung like 15 times and he just said get out.
Yeah, so. Whatever. Then he died. So what we're going to do and what I like to do is look at the archetypes as a storyteller. And we all have these archetypes. They are the unconscious energy that has been with us from all time. And it divides us into a quadrant of masculinity, femininity, whatever. It's the king, the warrior, magician, the lover. And when you look at these archetypes, which is a whole other show to dig deep, because this is a very vast concept. And it's one of my spiritual practices is the Jungian archetypes plus my twist on it, which is one thing I love about it, is Carl Jung said, I don't have all the answers. This is a template for you to further research and make your own assumptions versus the rigidity of science that says this must equal this, and there is no way around that. So with the archetypes, I like to play and I like to summon. So it's not that I have a ritual process of calling on my archetypal inspirations from the Mount Rushmore of masculinity, but it is helpful for me to think about them in the case that I want to think about, I'm inspired by this man for these reasons. And I like to do it with fictional characters because I find in nonfiction, Bill Cosby was a big hero of mine growing up, but he kind of went south a little bit, and I'm not going to put him on my Mount Rushmore, you know. So I'm not talking about the actors or whoever, but this can come from movies. It can come from comic books. It can come from video games, anything fictional. So I'll kick us off, and I know you have some, but if you maybe don't, I don't know, Adam, if you're too big into the archetypes, but I'm going to do mine by archetype. So I'm going to start with the magician archetype, which in the archetypes, the magician is the spiritual. It is the seeker of knowledge. And that's a very masculine thing to do, to go out and seek and discover and connect in that spiritual, universal, you know, connect with the universe and solve the problems. And that for me is Indiana Jones. So just dressed up as him for Halloween because I'm the same age as he was in Raiders of the Lost Ark. So when I look at him, we've got the intellect, we have the archaeologist, the anthropologist, we have the adventurer, because there's a way to become a studious magician. But in all of the characters, to embody the full masculinity of the archetype, you have to be connected to all the others, or at least in some way, mind and body. Like you have to have both. That's a whole shtick for my philosophy is mind, body. That's what writes a story. You can't have one without the other. Otherwise you're lopsided. So Indiana Jones, he was a professor and he fought Nazis and got thrown into oceans and somehow jumped out of a plane with a flotation device, landed on the snowy mountain, and then into India he goes. And then
you haven't done that before?
No.
You haven't jumped out of a plane in a raft that was inflatable onto the Himalayas and then like basically skied down Mount Everest?
No, but Never. I wanted to real bad.
Yeah. Well, we all want to.
Yeah. And I believe it too.
Yeah.
But watching it is very compelling. I'm like, I think that would work.
You mean they didn't really do that? I mean, it looked like they did.
As a kid, I did believe stuntmen had to be inside of it.
I mean, why? Of course they did. Somebody had to navigate that raft as it went down the mountain.
You know what I love about that scene is you can tell that they carved out certain ridges to steer the raft. And
I'm just thinking of how many takes it took to get there. It's like, okay, well, yeah, they figured out it went over a cliff, and then they figured out it would just like stop halfway down. They're like, dang it. This is going to take forever.
Good thing this river's a straight shot.
Spielberg!
With two other people in the raft, too. So now you're adding weight to it. And it's a magical scene. Also, the plane, the CGI has come so far. And I always get a kick out of watching how bad it is in Indiana Jones and these old movies. But also how much I didn't care when I was a kid. Because it was magic at that time.
I don't remember who I was talking to. Maybe it was you, Eric Beach, where I think it was the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where I think Indiana Jones was just, he didn't really even need to be there. Everything would have happened as it was without him there.
Correct.
But we still see that amazing CGI of people's faces melting and all of that. Spoiler alert, by the way.
Yeah.
I've not seen the
careful, Adam. Careful.
Yeah.
Now, I will say I think about that a lot. And one couple things that come to mind is Indiana Jones in that movie and the Raiders of the Lost Ark was our view into what the Nazis were doing. So without him, we don't get to experience what happened when they found the Ark and what happened when they also Ravenwood, Marion, she would die. So his purpose was to save her. That's what I've decided. And it also sets up the Crystal Skull, which then we find out that they had a child together. And so without Raiders, we don't get the mutt in Crystal Skull. Plus, I mean, Marion is going to have the Nazis visit. They're probably not going to let her live, I'm assuming. And if she gets to the stake and he doesn't say, close your eyes, she wouldn't know. So she would have died then. So his purpose in that movie is really to save Marion.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of lost in it. But when you really break it down, that it was a love story and a few Nazis happened to move it along for him or whatever. But his knowledge in that movie made me want to be an archaeologist. And I think when I think about learning, he made learning sexy, you know, and even in the Raiders movie, the girls are closing their eyes and it says, I love you. And all the people that want to learn from him, you know, he was charismatic, he made learning sexy, and he made the spiritual world interesting to me. And I wanted that magic. He made it magical. And so when I think about Indiana Jones on my Mount Rushmore, it's because he made learning and spiritual things seem magical to me. And I think about that now when I'm on a hunt for information. I'm not going to go all over the world seeking artifacts, but I do present my seeking of knowledge in a very similar capacity. So that's kind of why he's on my Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense, and I will say that I really enjoyed the Indiana Jones movies because there any movies where Nazis die, it's a good movie to me if Nazis are dying. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I do like that aspect of how you're breaking this down into the specific archetypes and the magician. And when you say that, I think of I'm thinking of MacGyver as somebody who's kind of got that similar theme of like, I'm an adventurer who figures things out, who's, he's got the mullet. So he's got that sexy thing down.
Oh, yeah.
And, so he's doing the deal. But yeah, good. I think that's a great path forward with Indiana Jones there.
Is MacGyver on your Mount Rushmore?
I think I wrote his name down. If we are by archetype, I would say that he's probably that fits that archetype for me, because even though I don't have him as highly elevated on my list of masculine people, when it comes to that magician kind of archetype, as you're describing it, I see that as fitting. I see MacGyver as fitting pretty well on that. I mean, the man played hockey. The man was a jack of all trades. He did everything, including, these all of that. And, you can even throw MacGruber on that list too, if you like, because he added that humor element to it. So there you go.
Well, he's the jester. I didn't include a jester on the Mount Rushmore, but True. That's a good consideration.
Yeah.
But MacGyver, he does give me magician, and part of the magician's gift is his ability to bring peace to the king through knowledge. And it's a very masculine trait to be calm. Every hero has a mentor, a spiritual elder who has elder wisdom that allows them to rise up into the hero they're going to become. And in the case of, Obi-Wan, he was very calm. You couldn't shake him. And so MacGyver, for him to come out on top, he needed to be calm. And why was he calm? Well, because he knew, he had knowledge. He had his own spiritual practice of how can I get myself out of these situations. It just occurs to me too that without being able to monitor myself in my headphones, I just have this feeling that it's going to be a lot of lip smacking, and it's going to be the grossest episode of all time.
Well, I can't hear it, and and if I can't hear it, it's remember, I'm listening for you, for everybody.
You're my producer. You're my producer. It's like that same thing.
On my business card.
If you can smell yourself, then it's really bad.
Oh yeah,
like that kind of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
No more
that's
need to
really
be said
bad.
on that one.
I mean, it's kind of weird. I mean, on that front, since you went there,
yes, I did.
Is it weird that like when you do smell yourself, like one of your farts, right?
Sure.
That I like how we have to qualify that. A fart.
One of yours, yes.
Yes. That there's a moment where it's like, oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Like you're proud of it. Like, why do we get what? There's something wrong there. Why do we get proud of that?
One of the truest.
I don't know. There's just.
Well, you remember what was it? Goldmember.
Yeah.
Everyone loves their own brand, don't they? Wafting. That's exactly what you're talking about. You just got to smell it. Oh.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You ever walk into an apartment and you're like, what are they cooking on that floor? It's that with ass.
That's impressive. Yeah, it's just like this impressive level of like, oh my gosh, that is amazing. Okay, well, good. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but
you crafted something you're proud of. I mean, it's just like arts and crafts,
right?
It's just arts and crafts. Yep. Oh, that's why we're friends.
Yes, indeed.
Flow. Anyway, next on the list is the lover. Now, this archetype, contrary to the word lover, which I've never really liked, I've always tried to replace it, but nothing really measures up besides poet, but even that doesn't capture it, so I leave it at lover. This is the archetype of creativity This is the archetype of compassion, connection. This is the person and the archetype that connects us, that sees the humanity. And this is also the archetype that people want to fight for. Mm-hmm. This is what the warrior is fighting for, is his people, the people who are lovers. And this, for me, is Ted Lasso. Mm-hmm. And if you've seen the show, I think that should make some sense to you, because a lover isn't just like a sensitive person. This is a person who sees and feels deeply. Ted Lasso saw and felt deeply. He thought about everyone he came into contact with. You know, he made biscuits, I don't know what you call them, but every day to give Rebecca, right? Mm-hmm. And she didn't know that they were handmade by him, which was a funny gimmick at first. But then when you think about, man, what a man, to every night, because you care about this person, but you don't want their affirmation. You're not doing it so that they think you're great. She thinks you're just going out and buying amazing cookies. But to do all of that without any need for acknowledgement. Now, to be fair, every one of these characters is flawed. Indiana Jones is flawed too. I mean, he had a little bit of a women chasing problem, and he didn't have great commitment except for Marion, which even that didn't go well. Ted Lasso, going through a divorce, he's away from his child. He's kind of running away, but the thing that really redeems him, in my eyes, just like some of the other names on this list that we'll get to in a more impactful way, and some of the other names, to be honest, is he doesn't run away from that pain. Mm-hmm. It takes him time to get broken enough to deal with it. But his heroic arc throughout the whole series is he seems like this perfect guy who's just compassionate, kind, funny, never misses a beat, but he has anxiety. He has a rough connection with his parents, but he ends up dealing with it. And it's through expression. His ability to express those realities are what saves him. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't save his marriage, but it does save his relationship with his family, with his mother, with his son. And that lover energy is the thing that softens us. The hardest warrior needs to soften. Mm-hmm. And Ted Lasso took a room full of intense, professional, egocentric athletes and softened every single one of them. He took his friend Beard, who robbed him. I'm probably giving way too many spoilers. I am sorry. Just like, but anyway, I guess I didn't think about that coming into it. It's like, how much can I give away? But if you look at his actions throughout that show, it's lover.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point. And by the way, first two archetypes that you have happen to be both of our Halloween costumes, because I was Ted Lasso for Halloween. And
attaboy.
Did an episode, by the way, on Halloween of myself as Ted Lasso doing doing the leadership lessons from Ted Lasso. So this is very relevant to that. And I could see that, you know, from that perspective, you know, there's so many lessons we could take from that show, which was the most amazing show that there was. And, you know, there's this idea there, too, that Ted Lasso is a coach. I mean, not just from the standpoint of the fact that is his title, but he is coaching people in general. He is guiding people. And that doesn't mean telling them what to do in the authoritative way that we think people need to do it. It's guiding them in the way that getting them to become the best that they are on and off the field. And one of the most amazing things that I really appreciated about that show, and Ted Lasso in general, is the fact that imagine yourself. I mean, yes, you can look at it from the outside and think that he has all the confidence in the world going in there because he knows what he's doing. But imagine yourself going into a role in another country where you don't know anybody. You don't know anything about the thing that you're jumping into, like whatever job it might be. You don't know anything about it. And when you get there, everybody's going to hate you, even your boss, who is hoping secretly that you're going to fail. Mm-hmm. Everything is against him. But why do we come out of that feeling like, oh yeah, but it's Ted Lasso and he's great and all this kind. It's because of his attitude. I mean, his attitude throughout the whole thing was the guiding force. And I don't know if that's true about the lover. Obviously, you know more about that archetype than I do, but it feels to me like that's a key part of that of that kind of archetype is just to lead by example, no matter what anybody else is feeling about you. It's all about outward love towards others.
Absolutely. And the whole country being called wanker, like from day one, just, and even by the time he was the hero, he was still wanker, but that was now an endearing term.
Yeah.
And so the lover will win you over, but every one of these archetypes has shadow. So I'm telling you that this is deep. I mean, there's entire master's doctorates on the archetypes, depending on how deep you want to go. But the shadows of the lover would be the addict and the impotent. So one is depression, one is addiction, pretty clear which is which. But when you don't have security in the lover, you will seek it through affirmation. That can mean addiction. You will suppress your feelings with food, with alcohol, with drugs, because you want to feel something and you want to control what you feel. A true lover doesn't need to control it because he or she manifests it in themselves. If you're impotent, you're just depressed and you're Eeyore. Eeyore was the impotent lover, which I don't like that I said that because that just puts Winnie the Pooh in this weird, like they were having sex.
I mean, weren't they? I don't know.
It depends on what Christopher Robbins was into.
That's why he was always depressed all the time. Oh,
oh crap. Okay, derailed train. Let's get back. No more Winnie the Pooh. Ted Lasso. So with the lover, what you're describing highlights the need for the lover to embrace their warrior. And if you look at the chart, the quadrant, there's a diagonal. There's an opposing archetype that this archetype needs to be fully balanced. And the opposite of the lover is the warrior. The opposite of the magician is the king. So in our lives, if you're all lover, you need a warrior friend because you need to learn from that person how to strengthen your lover. Just like that warrior is going to need you to learn how to soften and how to see the world for the poetry it is. Now, Ted Lasso just happened to be connected in that. And so any one of these men was accessing multiple, and they should be accessing all of them, but they will lean towards, just like we'll lean towards one more archetype. That's what differentiates all of these really powerful men. Is Indiana Jones is heavier in his magician, but he's a warrior. He's a lover, maybe a little bit addicted lover. I don't know, but he also has a soft spot for his short route, and he had a daddy wound. So that was driving some of that magician, and he had to heal that. And then the king we'll get to, but that's, the one who can order chaos. Now, MacGyver heavily influenced by king energy as well, because, well, he was organizing a lot of chaos so he could think. And he was also educating himself so he could organize that chaos. So with Ted, that lover is strengthened by the warrior, but he really oozes what I consider a powerful representation of a very misunderstood archetype. If you go anywhere in any kind of men's group or talk about the archetypes, the lover always it gets this really pushed off role that if you're spending 30 minutes on the king, you'll spend 10 minutes on the lover. And it's usually about don't be weak. You got to strengthen this lover. And everything else is noble, but the lover gets this bad rap. And Ted Lasso redeems that, because I can't look at Ted Lasso and not say, that's a man that I want to be like. No, I will absolutely say that. He is an inspiration to me as a character and what I want to embody.
Absolutely.
Also, one more point about that is he's also, you mentioned coaching. He's coaching. He's not a psychologist. I don't even know what his degree is, but his wife leaves him for the family therapist or for the relationship coach, or it was a psychologist.
Yeah.
And that dude was a clear representation of a therapist who's not in the right profession.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that goes against the ethical code of therapists to start breaking up marriage, especially marriage therapists. But,
yes. Yeah. Quite interesting. That was a good setup, though, because when he came to England and showed almost more interest in his good time than family dynamic, I was like, he's not going to last long. But I appreciate that because it highlights the fact that not every therapist is doing it for the right reason. There's people who become therapists because they don't want to deal with their own stuff. So they have the disillusionment that if they help people, they become the savior, and somehow they can tell themselves that they're good. But really, it's leaking out somewhere else, and it doesn't last. And he's a good example, whereas Ted Lasso, I would much rather him be my friend and coach me than that therapist, which
Absolutely.
I've had 2 amazing therapists in my life. And so I'm not dogging on therapy, but I am saying just because you have that doctorate and I don't, doesn't mean that one of us is better or worse than the other.
Right.
Because if we have someone connected to the lover like Ted, I don't care about your degree. You see me, you embrace me, and you do it in a way that isn't just like, oh, there. You're a good boy. You know, you will challenge me too because you see who I am. You'll call out the strength in me. That's what a lover does. Is Ted Lasso looked at the strength in all of the people in his room. Even I just totally blanked on his name. Is it not Nick? Is it Nick?
Nate
the Great.
Yeah, everybody forgets him anyway, so that's part of that.
I'm so sorry. It's okay. I was playing. I knew the whole time. Anyway, but he pulled that out of him. Like he showed Nate that he had greatness in him, and to me, that's one of the greatest powers of the lover.
Well, I loved how they had to how those people had to kind of come to terms with that too, because while Ted Lasso was bringing that out of them, he wasn't forcing it out of them. He let them go through their thing. Nate went through his temper tantrum that lasted all of 2 seasons, and so did Jamie Tart, and so did others, but eventually they came around, and that's kind of the beauty of that coach. That's pretty neat. So, yeah.
Not that you have to stay with lover, but why don't you bring up one of yours?
I'll go on the theme that kind of reminds me of, because a lot of those themes like compassion and kind of looking out for others gets to my next one, which is Happy Gilmore. And there's a reason I thought of Happy Gilmore there is because, you may look at Happy Gilmore as like this angry guy who's always beating the crap out of octogenarians, or getting the crap beat out of them by octogenarians. If you watch those.
Price is Wrong.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. But you see throughout that movie his genuine caring spirit. He's doing everything that he can for his grandmother, who he just wants to, take care of and keep the house for. And he goes from, being that kind of that flawed individual like you're talking about, the person that's sleeping with the I forget who it was, the housekeeper, whomever that was coming over, and then finding that mate and really connecting with her. And there was a level of certainty within Happy Gilmore that I think I appreciated, that represents that level of decisiveness from somebody. And that came, toward the end of the movie, where it was just just where everyone was telling him when the whole structure fell on top of where he was supposed to go, and he remembered the happy golf or whatever the heck it was called,
happy place,
and he looks at it and he's like, no, I'm just going to beat him now. And it was just that decisive moment where he did it. And so Happy Gilmore, I think he would fit that spot for me as in that lover category, not knowing enough about it, but knowing that at least from those standpoints, I think that having that level of compassion, he and his goofy grin sit on my rock-faced wall of my Mount Rushmore masculinity.
I'm liking the way yours is forming. This is fun. The interesting thing about Happy, again, he was selective in who he showed love to, and it wasn't a negative thing. It was they earned it or they deserved it, and those who didn't, well, obviously he had his flaw. He might have taken it too far, but with Shooter McGavin, for the most part, he didn't take it too far. He was actually really calm in the face of most of what Shooter McGavin did. I ate pieces of shit like you for breakfast. Well, that's weird. You eat pieces of shit for breakfast? No. You better watch out, or listen to the words I say. Dismay. Oh, I could go roll in the hay, and what do you say? Just the way he was able to, he always was calm in his retorts to Shooter, who was supposed to be the main antagonist. And I love that. I guess they'd call it taking the piss in Ted Lasso language. he didn't. But then, obviously, Bob Barker, that was a bridge too far, apparently.
A little bit, yeah. I think he was having a moment there. But for me, with golf anyway, if you're going to play golf, 18 holes is a long time to spend with another person. I don't know how everybody doesn't get to fisticuffs in that frustrating game that you spend so much time with other people on. And
you're always mad because it's never good enough.
Yeah,
your shots are always horrid.
Yes.
It's a very stressful game.
It is. Yeah, I don't know why people play it, but
Well, so we did Iron Man, right? And that's a long day, but it feels like it's just a conversation with your body, whereas golf is just constantly being faced with your shortcomings.
yeah. Well, let's just call it what it is, though. With regard to golf, 75% of people are just doing it to day drink.
Fair play.
Really? Right.
Yeah, fair play. Fair play. I agree with that. Same with hunting, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, that scares me. But yeah.
Oh yeah. I stay in your carts in golf. Don't go shooting and drinking, please.
Right. Yes.
That's why I don't live by the woods. Anyways, next, should we go to king or should we go to warrior? What are you feeling?
Dealer's choice. Let's flip a coin.
Okay.
All right. Got warrior.
The warrior. All right. We're going to go to the world of video games for one that is going to be an interesting one. God of War, Kratos. Kratos is my warrior, and he'll be the most intimidating one on the mountain for sure. And he is an interesting one because the redemption arc of Kratos to become the Mount Rushmore earning warrior that he is, the paragon of masculinity, takes 20 years of game development. And it wasn't even solidified until this last game, until Ragnarok. And it wasn't even solidified fully until the end of that game. And the crafting of that story from he was the ghost of Sparta because he was about to be killed in battle as a Spartan, and he cried out to Ares, the god of war at that time, to, if you save me, I'll serve you. And then so Ares gives him the blades of chaos. So he kills the barbarian, and now he's in service to Ares, and he ends up taking Kratos across this campaign of violence and destruction, brings him back to the village where his family was, and the oracle tries to warn him not to go, but he doesn't listen. Get out of my way, woman. Goes to the house, and he kills his wife and his daughter. And then the ashes of his wife and daughter are put onto his skin, so now he's white. And he also has the marking of his twin brother through those red tattoos, because his brother was born with a blue tattoo like that. So it's this physical being who is literally wrapped in the greatest traumas of his life, and all he knows is violence and rage, which is the shadow of the warrior. So he goes on a campaign to kill all of the gods, the whole pantheon, through 3 games. And there's all these side games that I never played, but then it comes back after this huge time of he's killed all of the Greek gods. And then he goes into hiding. He has a son. He meets a woman, has a son in Norse mythology. So where this takes place, I don't really know. I guess it would be Midgard. But Faye, his wife, gets sick, and he is, healed by her to a degree. He's still who he is. He's not talking. He's not dealing with this stuff, but he serves her. He gets ready the funeral pyre for her death. And then when she dies, she asks him to go to this mountain in Jotunheim, where she's from. She's a giant, which not physically, but giant is a race in Norse mythology. Goes to Jotunheim. You have to scatter my ashes at the tallest peak in Jotunheim. Needless to say that the Norse gods don't like this, so now God of War is back to fighting gods in this new Norse pantheon with his son. So the 2 games are him going through this process of raising his son, and his son realizing he's a god, and realizing, oh, we got to check this ego. And the whole time, Kratos seems like this overbearing father, but he's afraid for his son. And as it goes on, you get little glimpses of the 1,000-year lifespan of Kratos, of war and violence and trauma, encapsulated into him trying to create a different life for his son, which is a beautiful warrior lover thing to do. But when you have 1,000 years of trauma, you can't undo that in a single 6-year span, a 10-year span. So obviously we have a hyper compressed timeline, but he fights for his family. He is unstoppable. He is a warrior, and a warrior simply is the energy of getting things done. Anytime you have passion, anytime you have an idea and you take a step towards it, this would be the integrator, I suppose, is the warrior. If you have all the ideas in the world and you do nothing, you're not accessing the warrior. This is also physical body. This is strength, and Kratos is a god of strength. So he's unbelievable. So we can anecdotally look at his warrior that way, and that's what gets him sold easy, except for it's all shadow. But the beautiful thing is he believes he is worthless, but he's been fighting and serving his whole life since, he broke away from the Greek gods who did betray him, and he exacted his revenge, but still didn't feel peace about that because you won't, because it was out of rage. So he learns to soften in his own way, but he doesn't drastically change. He just lets in that energy of service and love. And it's emotional. Like you play as this character, you go on this journey with him, and then it gets to the end of the game, and there's just a subtle scene where it opens up this prophecy, and he sees a picture of him being worshipped and honored by these people after he dies, and he just gasps with emotion. And that's only one of two times where he gets emotional in the whole series. And just because of that gasp of emotion, where he realizes that all that he has vilified himself for, he is now redeemed because of his actions. The warrior's actions can go to damage, or they can go to heal and save. So Kratos' story starts out one way, but ultimately all of his energy, his warrior fight, saves. And he is redeemed, and he does so through the relationship with his son and with the cast of characters he meets by choosing not to engage in violence when he doesn't have to, by sparing the life of the god, because he's changing his path, his fate. But that god, given that grace, does not accept it because it's not up to Kratos, it's up to this guy, Heimdall. And he says, I'm going to kill your son. Well, now I have to kill you. Yeah. Because I've given you two chances, and now I can't. And he's not happy about that. So it's a transformation where it was just slash and everyone must die to I don't want to kill anymore. Yeah. I want to give you grace because I understand now. And through that course of action, he is a man of action. He can, and still can, take on anyone in the world, God or not. But he will always choose not to. And when violence becomes your last resort, then you've accessed the warrior. When action that builds rather than destructs or destroys becomes your action, then you're on the Mount Rushmore of masculinity.
Mic drop. And this is probably the only one that I can't necessarily speak much to as far as knowing the character because I've never played the game. However, I do have my Christmas present that I have already downstairs, not put together because I'm not going to open it till Christmas. That includes that very game. I'm excited about that.
My bad.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll return that one.
So now I know how that goes, but no, that's all good. But
you have to start out. Which game? The Ragnarok?
Yes. Yeah, it's the one that comes with the PS5.
Well, you have to start with God of War. I think it's 5 or whatever. It's just God of War. So you get the story because it does continue. And I didn't tell you everything, so there's still surprises.
Nice. So God of War, and then God of War Ragnarok.
Yes.
All right. Sounds good.
Must
and
be
I have
done.
to throw my cat out because she's eating plastic.
Okay. Well, so you didn't have one for Warrior. I know you have one more, so I guess that would be we can move on to King, which I don't know if it'll fit that, but we'll move on to it and you can share whatever one you have for it.
Sure.
But King orders chaos. The king is a little bit different in the sense that there are some who believe the king to access must have access to the other three. And almost like the king sits over the rest of the other archetypes. I agree and disagree. My big thing with the king is the ordering of chaos and the bestower of blessings. So this means anytime you're connected to this energy, you're giving compliments to people that are really authentic. And that sounds like a lover thing to do, but king is going to be accessing it. The lover might not bestow the blessing. They oftentimes will, but it's different. The lover might be compassionate, but the king is powerful. And it's a different, if you've ever received a blessing from a strong man, it's different than a soft man. Not that either one is better, but one comes from lover, one comes from king. And the king is the booming voice. You know, you think about Aragorn or something. Aragorn? Sounds like a farmer. The farmer.
It's one of those
Aragorn's going to go get some corn. The yield is higher. Beacons of Gondor are lit. Anyway, the king for me is James Fraser from Outlander. Have you ever seen that show?
I have not.
Oh man, we got to learn you up. He's Scottish.
All right. Okay, good.
Outlander. Is this? It's a very interesting watch. But Jamie Fraser, for those who know him well, he oozes
Dr.
king.
J, as I call him. Yeah.
Well, he technically is what would you call it? A laird. He would be, which is like a Scottish lord, because of his heritage, or he doesn't end up being that, but he ends up starting his own community. But he was a warrior, did all these warrior things. But his connection to the king is because he's so strong in the lover, the magician, and the warrior. He always learned. He was very educated, knew multiple languages. He's just this backwoods guy, it seems like, but he's very educated. He cares about his village, his people, so much so that he would sacrifice his own life, very warrior. But the part about him being a king is his strategic mind. He's able to, in the face of great adversity, have his calm, see things, see the field of battle for what it is, not lose himself to emotion. He's measured. And that's really the heart of a king, is to be measured in action and word. And when you say something, you really mean it. And you're not giving over to the fire of passion because you're able to control that chaos, but also problem solving. This is why I kind of gave MacGyver some of that.
Yeah.
Because you can problem solve as a king. That's one of the things you do. When think about a king, what do they do in the ancient times is they would sit and hold court, and the villagers would come, whether it was a Scottish laird or a king, and they would, what's your complaint? He stole from me. I didn't steal from you. You took from me first. Well, here's my ruling. Split it 50-50 and F off. Or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'd be a good king, but
it would be a terrible job. That just sounds horrible.
Oh, let me ask you a problem.
Complaint. Yeah.
It reminds me of the Paul F. Tompkins bit. Brian Regan.
Oh yeah.
It's like one of the worst jobs would be the lost baggage claim area.
Oh gosh.
Everyone that walks out, let me guess you're mad at me. Let's form 2 lives, 2 lines, one live it at me, one I want to wring your neck. Let me guess you're mad. What a job. Yeah, but James Fraser, he is the most, I don't want to say, he and Indiana, like Jones and Ted Lasso, obviously are very realistic. Maybe not indie, but Ted Lasso and James Fraser are very rooted in reality, whereas Indiana Jones is a little bit bigger than life, and Kratos clearly is larger than life. But James Fraser and Ted Lasso both are rooted in reality. So it's almost more powerful to think about them because they're very similar. They were just 300 years apart.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think there's something very masculine too about traveling through time, because then your masculinity is timeless, right?
Ooh,
so yeah. So that's that's a good one. Yeah. So I think so. I have a couple more that I thought of as you were talking about the warrior and the king. And when I think of the warrior, as you were describing it, I think of Magnum PI. You've had a mustachioed hero, and I want a mustachioed hero on my wall too.
Indeed.
No, it was Ted Lasso. I'm sorry, I'm just joking. But Magnum PI represents that warrior, I believe, because he is, he is spending his life essentially running from something, but doing this job that is essentially meant to be relatively harmless. I mean, private investigator, where you're not supposed to be putting yourself in the line of danger necessarily all the time, but yet he finds himself there every week without fail, helping.
It wasn't private.
What wasn't private?
His thighs.
Oh yeah, it's very true.
Takes a real man to
Very
wear those
true.
shorts.
Yeah, no, damn straight. Yeah, those shorts and a nice hairy chest and a mustache you can cut your teeth to, as they say.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and throughout this series, I mean, it was very hammy for a couple of seasons, but as you go on throughout this course of the series, it gets more emotional. He starts to develop a personality around this, and he has his relationship with Michelle, who is his lover from Vietnam, and there are things that bring the warrior out, where he's like, he meets people and he does kill people in cold blood. There's actually an episode called In Cold Blood, where he kills somebody in cold blood. And it happens to be, I believe, well, because we were at in a Cold War with the Russians at the time. He was the quintessential Russian communist, person. But yeah, so Magnum PI is my warrior on that list. And for King, I've got an interesting one too. I want to bring it back to the Ted Lasso theme. I think Roy Kent represents that King pretty well, as you're talking about.
His eyebrows alone.
His eyebrows, yes, and because as you're talking about that giving that authentic feedback, or that authentic praise, or when you give that, I think of Roy Kent, because you think of Roy Kent, he's always that fuck off kind of guy, who's always just
sure,
saying that. But when you see him being authentic, it comes out and it shines and it has authority. And by himself, his very character has authority on the field. He was the captain. People were chanting his name. When he left, he came back as a coach. And, since we've already spoiled the show, he comes back at the very end as, one of the head coaches. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's definitely King energy in Roy Kent.
I agree. And I love it because I never thought of it that way. But one thing that hit me was, what does he do? Jamie Tart has a picture of him and Keeley in his bedroom. And the King thing he does is he seeks out Jamie to give the blessing. And whether he initially knew it, because he did this before he knew just probably how much Roy meant to Jamie. He just knew it was right. He's the elder. He has to make amends. And they make connections. It's not everything's great, but he makes that first step. And that's a very kingly thing to do, to be the bigger man, to go give the blessing to the younger, and then find out, wow, this is trippy because I didn't maybe think about myself as being important to this man. Right. I just did it because it's the right thing. But now that I know I have this responsibility, I have this throne, well, now I need to make sure I use that sway for good. My influence in this world of influencers, I need to make my influence matter to someone, not for my benefit, but because I realize I have the power to take this wound and remove it. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have a King, a Roy, giving you a blessing, you have one giving you a wound. That's the common theme in the King and in masculinity. If you don't have a healthy man in your life giving you a blessing, you are being hurt by one. And I've lived that narrative for a long time. And I think Jamie lived that one for a long time with his father. And so you get that Roy Kent nobleman, the Ted Lasso. There's a lot of King energy being given to him through those two men.
Yeah. It's very true. I mean, and I think that's one of the things that happened in one of the first episodes of that show that I thought was a powerful leadership lesson too. And maybe going back to Ted Lasso for a moment, as that lover and that understanding, that coach, he looked at Roy Kent and said, see him right there? That's the first domino that needs to fall.
Yeah.
We need to earn his heart and his mind before we earn anybody else's. And so he recognized that. And that's probably the King energy that he was trying to get, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you think about the lover in Ted Lasso, a lover sees people for who they are and can empower that person. So a king might walk into the room and command respect because of their presence. The lover is going to see people for who they are and then individually go after, like Ted did.
Yeah.
But Roy, he was the king. He was just a broken king. Now, as the shadow of the king, you can be a tyrant or you can be sort of the impotent. I forget the word for it right now, but one of them is a tyrant, which is obvious what that means. That's the F off. This is the I'm very aggressive, just listen to what I say, whereas a king is going to be more measured, like I said, in his words. So you have this redemption of the tyrant becoming the king. And through that, a weakling prince, that's the other. The other is the weakling prince. So it's that person who, almost like Nate, believes he has no power. So he's an impotent lover and a weakling prince. And then he becomes a tyrant when he gets power. So he was a weakling prince king, whereas Roy was a tyrant king. But that means that they have the power to become a king in their fullness. And that's what Roy, the domino fall, is him becoming his highest good. Him out of the shadow into the light, and a lover can bring you there because they finally make you can't refute the lover. A true lover is going to care about you and see you for who you are and work their way through if they're tough enough, because Ted Lasso had to be tough and believe and commit to his reality, not let himself doubt it, so that he could allow King Roy to take center stage and lead like he did.
It was I guess what we're trying to say is that was a really freaking good show.
It was one of the best. And I mean, I 100%. love movies. I love shows. And I will say that is top tier.
100%. Yeah.
Amazing. And I think it's because they showed a man in a very empowering light by not just going to a trope of the warrior and the traditional king, the one who leads through, I don't want to say dictatorship, but that much more aggressive versus assertive. That's the difference between a really healthy man and kind of that boyish man, because they want to aggress. They want to smash the opposition and conquer. Whereas the assertive masculine man is going to know boundaries. It's going to set them and not be emotionally led, but use his emotions to guide. And Roy did that. That was one of his arcs. And with Keeley, that was a big moment of releasing, saying, like, I love you, and I'm accepting that you don't want to be with Jamie or myself. Because you need to figure out who you are, not being attached to someone before you can attach to someone. So he had that patience, and he could see that and not be, but I wanna, high chair tyrant pout because the world's here for me.
I think that all of these characters that we have on our Mount Rushmores of masculinity, I think that they all represent in some way how we can, serve the greater good while living into that masculinity. And I think this is one thing that I think we need to focus on as men is to reclaim that word as something that can be good. I mean, we have a tendency in this world to just maybe put down words as quote unquote toxic because there's a light that shows around them, maybe legitimately so, because of abuse on that front. But I think taking that back in a loving way is an important thing to do. And I think this exercise here that you've put on us, Eric, has been a great way to do just that.
Oh, thank you. Because I think it's not something that we have to do all the time. I don't have a poster of this on my wall, but I do think about it. And I think we go through stretches in life where we're doing good, we're cruising. Yeah. But then we have to have these things that we can have as touchstone moments where we can come back to and even shift over time. But at least what I believe is as we're crafting this story, we have these inspiring figures that we can look at. And I'm not going to go become an archaeologist. I'm not going to become a coach. I am, because my modern myth is very much a coaching community, so I'll take that. But I'm not going to coach soccer or football.
Right.
But it's good to look at the expression of masculinity, which is something I've been confused by my whole life, because like you say, it conjures up images in the mere utterance of the word. Same with femininity or stay at home, anything. All of a sudden it is going to conjure up homeschooling. All of these words conjure up immediate reaction, and it limits any conversation. Yeah. And so a mature masculine or feminine person is going to be able to have a conversation. And when I look at these people as an exercise, if you do this, if you make a Mount Rushmore of masculinity, whether you're a man or a woman, you start to understand what you find attractive. This isn't a relationship thing. This is what do you find attractive as qualities go? And what of those are speaking to you? Because what we choose is a mirror of what's inside of us. My people are a reflection of who I am in some way. Your people are a reflection of who you are in some way as well. And if you take that exercise and you really look at it, you can start to understand a bit more about yourself and take that into your daily life. And maybe you sit with this Mount Rushmore for a week or two, and then you don't look at it again for a long time. But then maybe you get off track a little bit. And these are good resources to have to reconnect with, because if we stop thinking about things, we get lost. We wander off the path and we start doing our own thing, and we forget. Why did I start a podcast? Because I kept forgetting. Do I think I can make an impact? I hope so. I want to so badly make an impact. I want to change people's lives because I want to give that blessing, because I changed mine and I know that feels so good.
Yeah.
But I did this because I keep forgetting if I don't talk about it every week. We all will forget. That's why church is probably every week. It's because if you go once a month, you probably forget what you learned or whatever, but you need that quarterly refresh. You need that weekly reset of remembering what you're even focused on. That's why quarterly goals trump yearly goals.
Yeah.
Because that's a long time to stay focused on one thing, you know?
Yeah, you need to stay consistent and work the muscle out. And consistency means frequency as well as, just staying with it. You just gotta stay consistent.
If we did a Mount Rushmore of words, consistency would be king on my Mount Rushmore. That would be the blessing. Maybe we'll work on that. A word. I know what yours would probably be.
Yeah. What do you think?
Transcend.
Transcendence.
Yeah, would that be your king?
That would probably be my. That would be my
a magician, I suppose.
It could be my magician, yes, because I think it does require a sense of well, I think creativity would be my magician, and so I think transcendence, it's either king or even warrior, maybe.
It's the one to rule them all.
Yes. So,
who is my man that rules them all? I don't know. Anyway, well, that's going to do it for today. I hope you are encouraged to make your own Mount Rushmore of masculinity, as we've kind of laid out here. But if you do, I really encourage you to do fictional characters, because humans are flawed, and it's just not great, I don't think, to pin all of your hopes and expectations on this ideal man who lives in this world, because you don't know, and these characters are fictionalized representations of something that's reflected in you. So it's not going to get conflated, because you're separating reality from the fiction, but you're taking the reality from the fiction and applying it to yourself, which will never not be true. Lots more fun little things like this I think we can do, because they're exercises. They're fun exercises. Doesn't always have to be heavy. And I think that soul work can get really heavy. And I've been feeling that recently, where you dig in so deep, you've got to come up for air. And that's where that gesture, like, this is kind of fun and tongue in cheek, and, it's silly at times, but the gesture lives in all of it. And he's going to make you laugh while you're thinking about these very serious topics. But also, I just want everyone to be able to shift their vision. You're training muscles. Well, the mind shifts vision. It creates new pathways so we can see things differently. Maybe you go watch a movie differently. You're not just looking at it as a story. You're looking at the nuance within the story and the characters' arcs, because it's more immersive. And that changes. I mean, that's why Ted Lasso was so good. It was funny, but it had so much depth. So get out there, keep changing the vision, keep working out the mind and the body at the same time, because you got to do both. Otherwise you'd be lopsided and you won't be able to achieve anything of real merit and value in your life, because it'll always be this fast burning sugar source. So mind, body, story. Until next time, pretty well, my friends.